All right, we're back to App from Scratch, JavaScript for complete beginners. And in the previous session, we did an hello world exercise. And basically, we started with the goal, our true north, our compass, true north, is that we are going to build a calculator, and we're gonna build one that's fairly advanced. Basically, we can use it for custom equations like, say, BMI calculation, or we can even do more complex stuff like, say, for example, mortgage calculation. So how far we get depends on how far we want to push this, but if we use something that's a fairly ambitious goal, then it's going to last us for a long time to work on it, and which can really teach us a lot of things. So in the previous session, the first one that we did, the hello world, the goal was to basically to just print out something on screen. Okay, and we did that at two levels. We did that printing out in the JavaScript console, and then we also print out something onto the browser via writing an HTML file. So what's our next step? Well, if we look at a calculator, let's do a quick look on what a calculator will look like. That we all know pretty well. Actually, let's bring up one that's on the computer, and we can see it here fairly quickly. For a standard calculator, you have something right here. Actually, let me just make sure that I can show both of them on the screen at the same time. Let's do it this way. All right. So on a regular calculator, you have the following. You have an area in which this is basically the display that can show you, so for example, what you typed, and as well as what's calculated as the result. And then down here, you have a bunch of buttons. Okay, now the specific button depends on how you designed it, of course. But basically, these buttons are, things like, say, the numbers, and as well as the plus, minus, multiply, and divide. And then you also have the equal. When you hit equal, you're gonna get back the answer. And you also have, there are some, depending on the particular calculator you have, you also have clear. And you might also have some additional, memory slots. Some calculator allows you to remember multiple things. And finally, in a more advanced calculator, you might even have, let's see what kind of calculator that this one comes with, some sort of scientific formula. So for example, on this particular one, we have things like sine, cosine, tangent, log, so on and so forth. Now, if we want to build a calculator, obviously we start with the standard, and as we get further, we can decide, do we want to take on the scientific calculator, or do we want to do something above and beyond even potentially scientific calculator. But having this mental model of what the calculator look like can really help us to remember what our true north is, okay, and what our goal would be. So just keep that in mind as we keep on working forward, and we'll go from here. Okay, so since we did printing on the screen last time, then if we look at what a calculator could look like, obviously let's use the one that's already built for us, so that way you can see it clear. Then the next few things that we can tackle is really as follows. One, draw out the calculator on screen. Two, we will evaluate the typed in values multiply, add, subtract, multiply, etc. Okay, and then 3, finally print out the results. So our goal would be then focusing on trying to get to these points. Okay, so let's get back to our work then. On the last one, we did basically a very straightforward printing out the screen. So let's take a look at it again. This is what the screens print out, and let's look at what the code looks like. Looks like I might have closed my my editor, so let me open that. Keep on going to the place, a different project. Let me open up the right project. So in the last time we wrote simply a single function, document.write, and then we print out this sentence, hello world, this is printed by my JavaScript code. And this is the output. Hello world, this is printed by my JavaScript code. Okay, so we can take a look at this source file fairly easily by going back to the developer tool again, and then now previously we were looking at the console in the last session. Now this time let's look at the elements. And when we click on elements, we'll see that over here the whole HTML file is listed as a structure that you can open close like this. So when we open things all the way up, we will see that, okay, now we have HTML, head, title, body, script, and then 2 H1s now. If we then go back and look at our original source code, we can see that there was only one. So which means that the script here gets evaluated, and then it prints out this additional line right here. But inside the elements, this is not a flat file. This is an actual structure of what the documents look like, and then you can actually you can actually manipulate it. So for example, let's just try here really quick. If we double click on here and then we try to change this, say this is something I just added. Okay, now if we then go back to the original browser window, we can see that by me modifying the file inside the developer tool, we can see it being printed out here. So this is the reason why that you're going to be using developer tools a lot, especially if you're going to be doing development in JavaScript as a front-end developer, because developer tool is really, really easy for you to try to figure out how exactly to get the type of behavior that you want. Okay, so for example, let's say that instead of printing this out in the boring black color, let's just say that I want to add additional color to this particular element. So if we come over to the right hand side, we can see that there's a styles tab, computer tab, event listener, DOM breaking points, properties, so on. But for now, let's just focus on style. Style is basically where you can apply CSS style sheets. So by me just clicking in between the brackets right here, just click on that, it's going to allow me to add a new style to this particular element. Let's say that if I want to change this color to red, then I can do something like this. I think it is just color. So again, the nice thing about the developer tool is that as you type, it's going to help you to select from a list of properties that looks like what you're trying to type. So let's do color, and then let's see what happens. Let's just make the color red. Okay, red is a simple color. Let's do that. And now let's take a look. All right, so we have just applied a new style to this element down here. Now let's do the same for the one above. Actually, if you come back over here, you can see that the style, by you adding the style over here, it is also adding it into the document structure right here. Okay, now let's do something else. Let's do font. Let's do weight, font weight, and this allows you to choose something like bold, bolder, so on. Okay, let's do bold. And now let's see what happens. Well, I guess you cannot really tell because H1, the heading 1 element is already bolded. So let's see if we can add an additional element. Let's see, how do we add an element right here? Okay, it can be difficult to add an element underneath. Let's do that. Let's do P. This is an additional paragraph that I added. Now let's get out here. Okay, so we have just created that particular element, and you can see down here it's much smaller than the heading 1 by design. Now let's make it bigger. So if we come back to this element, then let's do font size, and let's do larger. Now it looks a little bit larger, but not too much. Let's try to bump it up even more. Let's do 50px. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, now when it's 50px, it's actually bigger than the heading 1. Now let's do font weight equals bold. Now let's see what it looks like. Okay, you can kind of tell that this font weight gets bigger. So if we move in front of this and uncheck it, smaller, larger, smaller, larger. See, it's all very nice to do that, right? So now let's try to see if we can do it in JavaScript. The reason why we want to do it in JavaScript is because, again, you're not going to be there in front of the user to click and checking these particular different sets of properties for them. So you want the code to do that for you. So now let's try to see if we can find this particular element. Okay. Now this is basically what we need to learn on this is, what's the word for it? The word is API. This is the application programming interface for HTML. And the right word for it is called DOM. So that stands for Document Object Model. Okay. And basically, as you learn how to develop front-end, basically client-side JavaScript code, this is like almost 90+% of what you will be working with. You will get very familiar with the document object model. So let's get started on that. What's the first thing that we're looking for in the document object model? The name itself gives us the idea is that we're looking for the document. So if we type in DO, we can see that it shows a list of different choices for us. And the one that we're looking for specifically right now is this guy right here. It's the lowercase document. You can see down here there's an uppercase document, and there's an uppercase document fragment. There's an uppercase document type, and then there's a couple other things called HTML document as well as XML document. So ignore those for now. Eventually you're going to come across them all and you'll learn them all. But for now, let's do document. And let's see what it is. Remember, this is an identifier that points to a variable, and that's already available. So if we just hit that, then it's going to print back this thing right here. Okay, so this is, when you see this little triangle sign in front, what it means is that you can open it. Okay, so when we click on that, then you can see, oh, inside under this pound document, and it's gonna have HTML, it's gonna have head, it's gonna have body, and let's try to open up further. Then you can see, okay, it's almost the same as what you see up here. Okay, this is my first JavaScript program, blah blah blah, and body. You can see that there's a script that does the same thing as that. There's a 2 heading one, and there's one style. One paragraph element. So basically, by us typing in the word document, we're gaining access to the document itself. And now our goal is to gain access to all these particular individual elements that we're looking for. So for example, let's just try it. What's the properties available underneath document? If we do a dot right here, if we hit a dot, now you can then start to see a bunch of the properties that are being brought up. It's document location, A-link color, all, BG color, blah, blah, blah. You can read through the whole thing. I mean, as a matter of fact, you probably never read through the whole thing. You're going to make use of them as you need them. But you just know that there's a bunch of properties and actually also methods that's available to you underneath the document. The word is object, okay? Remember going back here. Document, object, model. Underneath the document object, there's a bunch of properties and methods that you can make use of to do what you need to do. So let's see what does some of the basic ones. Let's take a look. Let's do document location. Let's see what is available. What does it do? Now it tells you this. Okay, document location prints out the following value. It prints out the value saying that this is again, remember that this little triangle right here, this solid triangle, it tells you exactly what it is that you have. And when it's a solid triangle, it means that you can click on it and open it. It means that it's an object that has additional things, additional properties underneath it that you can inspect further. And the most important one for the location is that it's pointing to basically this string right here. This string is the value of this location, which belongs to a property called href. Okay, stands for hyperlink reference, and it says file C users YZ project beginner JavaScript index.html, and that matches exactly as that. Okay, now as we said, this whole thing is an object, and a lot of these properties you can make change of. We show how to make changes of it through this style window right here. We can actually make changes of, say, for example, changing the href to something else. But when you change your href to something else, what happens is that you're actually going to trigger the browser to do something with it. And specifically, when you change your location here, then you go to a different page. Since we want to stay on this page, we will not mess with the location. But we can mess with something else. We can try, say, for example, let's take a look. What else is available underneath document? Type in dot, and then you can see BG color. So let's take a look at what's the current BG color right now. BG color stands for, it's a short for background color. Doesn't have anything. So I guess when it doesn't have anything, it goes to the default color, which is white. Let's try to see if we can change it to black. Hey, there we go. When I change it to black, now this whole screen has just darkened. And we can no longer see the text that was also black before, but we can see the text that was originally, that we have set to red before. So it's kind of dark. Let's make it a little bit brighter so that way we can see a little bit more. Let's do gray. Okay, now we can see that. Now this red, it's a little bit too, doesn't mix very well with the gray background. So we'll go back to do white. Now, when it comes to color, besides just some of these normal color names, you can also name them with their RGB value. Ooh, I just closed it. Let's reopen it again. You can also name them to the RGB value. So the RGB values are, for example, let's do pound. If we want to do black, then it would be 0000000. Okay, and then if I want to do white, it will be FFFFFF, and that sets it to white. Okay, so in the RGB color, the zeros are the darker values, and then the Fs are the white values. It's a hexadecimal. So which means going from 0 through 9, then A through F, which stands for A is 10 and then F is 15. Okay, and then when you have a value like FF, it means FF stands for 255, I believe. Okay, it's basically taking 16 times 16 minus 1. That's what the value is. You can try to multiply that. It should give us 16 times 16 minus 1. Yep, 255. So you'll get used to it after you read it more. And for now, just remember that these are hexadecimal numbers. Okay, and then it's the first two numbers are for the red value, the second two numbers are for the green value, and then the final two numbers are for the blue value. So RGB. Okay, there's also RGBA, which stands for alpha, and alpha means opacity. So anyway, as you learn more about how to manipulate the properties in HTML pages, these are the things that you will end up learning more. Okay, now, so what do we want to do? We want to try to use our JavaScript code to do additional manipulations. So let's try it. If we want to, let's see if we can gain access to this paragraph element. Let's do get element by tag by, let's see, get elements by class by tag name. Let's do this one. Let's get elements by tag name. What it means is that we want to get all of the elements that have the same tag name, and in this case we want the tag name of P, which stands for paragraph, and that give us back the only P element that we have. But now it's interestingly, it gives us back in this little thing that's enclosed by square bracket like that. And when we open up, remember we're saying there's an object we can inspect its properties. The first property it gives us back is a length property. Then the second property it gives us is a property that starts from 0, and then here's a P. And finally it has this property that has a 2 leading underscores, and it's called proto, and the 2 underscores, and then finally it tells us something called HTML collection. Okay, so what does this all mean? First, let's talk about what this is. Okay, in JavaScript, open square bracket and then a closed square bracket makes something called an array. Okay, what is an array? An array. What is an array? An array. A more easier way to think about an array is a list, because we're probably more used to the term like a list. A list of things, a list of names. Okay, so what's a list of names? John, Mary, and then David, right? Zeb. More than one names, and it's combined together. It's called a list. Okay, now array and list are somewhat similar in the sense that there's gonna be a multiple things inside an array as well as inside a list. And for the purpose of JavaScript, we can almost think of this as the same thing, but there is definitely a more technical definition for them, and that can make them different. For now, just think of this way. Think of an array as a list of things, and it can be many different types of things, but let's just say it's a list of things. And then it also has the ability for you to access any particular thing inside the list by just an index. Okay? So for example, if we come back here, let's just create a list of names. Remember earlier we said that we can create a variable and we can give it an identifier. Let's just say a list of names equals John, Mary, David, Peter, Nancy. Okay. Now here's a print. Let's print back the list of names. We see that now it gives us something that looks like this. There's a 5. It gives us this parentheses 5, and it prints us out this information of John, Mary, David, Peter, Nancy. And when we open it up, we can see that it has a 0 colon John, 1 colon Mary, 2 colon David, 3 colon Peter, 4 colon Nancy. And then it has a thing called length 5. And finally, it has an underscore, proto underscore, double underscore, and then it says array 0, like that. Okay, then when we open that up, we can see there's additional properties in here. So without digging down to that level, let's just say if we want to access any particular items inside, we can just provide it with these indexes. So what's in front of this colon is called a key, but another way that we can use the term is called index. So for example, a list of names, and if I put in 0 right here, it's going to print us back the value that is at the 0th position, which is John. And then if I do, say, for example, 3, then it's going to print us what is in the 3rd position, what was indexed by the 3rd, but by the key 3, and it's Peter 3. And if we print back, say, for example, a list of names, and then we do length, we can see that it gives us 5, which means that there are 5 elements in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so what is interesting about array, and specifically any language, any programming language that is C style programming language, is that their array starts from position 0 instead of a position 1, which is what we usually think about when we humans do it. We say this is the first position, second position, third, fourth, fifth. But in any language that's C style, including JavaScript, it starts from the 0th position. So you don't say a list of names 1 and expect to get back John. You say a list of names 0 to access the first position. And there's a historical reasons for it, but we won't get into it right now. For now, just know that. And if we learn the concept of an array, then up here, if we go back to documents, get elements by tag name, and then we get a P again. Then this basically means exactly the same thing. Now we can know what to read. It's basically consider this as an array, and then it has a P element in here. And when we open it up, it tells us that the length of this array is 1, and then the 0th position is the P element that we're looking for. And we can know that to be true by us highlighting over this element. And we can see on the original page that it's actually highlighting it just as we are moving over it, like that. Okay? And to access it, we simply access that particular element, we simply type in the index of 0, and now it's really giving us back this particular element like that. Okay? Now we can then, once we have the element, we can do a lot of stuff with it, because remember, this is we're making changes to the document object model. So we can do, say, for example, let's try it, or some of the properties that we have access to. Let's see. I think it is. Do we change it directly to style? I think we can change it like this. Yes. So when we type in style behind it, then we can see that here's all the CSS values, and it says font size is 1, font weight, blah blah blah. Let's try to see if we can change some of these values. Let's do font weight. Let's see what it is. When we type in font weight, now The difference between CSS and JavaScript is the naming convention. In CSS, instead of typing, you type like font weight with everything is lowercase with dashes in between. But to convert that into JavaScript, you type in you remove the dash and then you capitalize this first character of the second word. So just remember that will be the conversion between the two different naming conventions. So if we want to change the font weight to bold to something else, let's try to change it to inherit. When we change it to inherit, we can see that we just got rid of the bold. And we can change it, say, for example, let's change the color. Let's change it to green. Oh, no, that's not how you do it. Is it? Oh, it is. Except I'm highlighting it so I couldn't see it. And we can change the background color. Let's change it to purple. That's gonna make it really ugly. Actually, does it do it? Let's see. No, I guess it's not BG color. It's what would be the value of it? Let's take a look again. It's not BG color. What is it? It's actually full background color, like that. So let's try it one more time. There we go. Yep, that does make it really poor looking. Let's try to use a different color that's a little bit nicer. What's a nicer color? Blue? Nope, doesn't look good either. Let's do just pink. Okay, that's not too bad. So we'll stay with it right now. So as we can see, with the document object model and the combination of JavaScript, you can actually automate and basically, making changes to the properties. And you can even make it so that way it's based on interactions by the user. So when user click on something, then you trigger some sort of operation on the document object model itself. And that is basically what we will be doing when we're trying to build out our calculator code. So let's go back and take a look at what our goal is that we want to draw the calculators on the screen, and by us knowing how to do the manipulations, we can then try to say, for example, if we want to start to add the buttons on the screen, we could do that. So for example, document, and then let's do create element. Okay, so let's define it first. Var button1 equals document dot create element, and then we'll call the element button. Okay. Okay, now if we type in button1, we can see that is the button1. Now this button1 is created, but it's not on the screen. So let's try to add it to the screen. Document element, and then I think it is actually called document element. No, we don't want document element. We want a body element, and then we want to do append child, then button1. Now we can see that is the button that we have added. It's hard to see it right now because there's nothing in there, but we know that it's there because we can come up here to look at the elements page. We can see that when we highlight over that, then it shows up on this side. So the reason we don't see it is because we didn't specify it's anything that makes it more visible. So let's try to do that. Let's do, because we already have the button1 itself, let's add a text to it. So let's see, how do we add text content? Let's try, is text content a function or is text content, let's see, if we add something like this, 1. Okay, now when we set the text content to 1, we can see that it's now printing to 1. We can do it a little bit bigger. Let's do click me. Okay, now we can see that it shows click me, but it's still kind of tiny. Let's make it bigger even. Let's change the styles. So style, and then let's change the font size. Let's make it 30 px. Okay, now this button is now almost big enough for us to see something. Now, finally, when we click on this, because we haven't make it do anything, we cannot really, we need to hook it up to do something. So let's try it. Let's try it to, when we click on it, we want to change this paragraph to a regular color. Okay. So button 1, add event listener, and I think it's click function. Let's change document elements, get elements by name, p 0 dot style dot background color equals white. Okay, now what happens when we click on this? Oh, now we are getting an error. The error says cannot read property style of undefined, which means that this thing did not give us what we were looking for. So let's try it one more time. Let's see, just make sure that we were at the right place. When we hit that, yep, you can see it gave us back undefined. Unlike what we were expecting, which was that when we hit this, we can get back this paragraph element right here. And the difference is that I used the wrong function. Over here it says get elements by name, but the one that we were looking for was get elements by tag name. Okay, so let's modify our earlier function, and let's change that instead of by name, we change it to by tag name. And now let's enter. And when we go back and hit click me, okay, so it did two things. And the reason it did two things is this. First of all, you change the right one changes to white, but the wrong one throws the same error as before. And that is because we did something called add event listener, which means that the event listener, the function, was added to it. But since it was wrong, the only way that the only way that it's not gonna get called again is if we remove it, because once we add it, you'll get called regardless of whether or not you throw an error in the first place. So we had to remove it, but because we currently don't have the ability to remove it yet, so we'll leave that alone for now. But this shows us that we can actually hook up all these. We can make it interactive to what the users do by hooking up the event listeners. So for up to this point, it's probably easy to see that I'm really making changes here, but it's probably also difficult to know exactly what's everything that I'm changing, because while you know that there's underneath document, there's a lot of stuff that you can change. It is difficult for you to know specifically what's the thing that you want to change. And the truth is that most people, honestly, developers, even the developers who's very, very experienced, don't have these sort of things just remember on top of their head either. They can remember some of the stuff. Like I was remembering that if I want to set the text, I can change the text content field. And if I want to change the font size, what that is. But we don't remember every single one of these. And so what developers do a lot is actually use Google to search for information. So for example, if you want to say change the background color, then we do search on Google, say, hey, Css JavaScript, change element background color. Then in here, it's going to give us some links, and we can go in there and say, for example, style on the W3 schools. Chances are, when you search online, you'll find a lot from this particular site. It will tell you how to set the background color for a document, for an element, so on. So, a lot of time, that is exactly how you are going to learn what to do with the DOM element. But by showing you the basic process here, then you can then apply that to trying to figure out what is everything that you need to do. And I promise you, you will use Google a lot. Google will become your friend. But for now, we're just going to show you exactly what are the basic stuff that you need to remember, so that way you know how to apply it more and more. So we'll continue more in our next session in trying to get to basically drawing out the whole calculator on the screen. Okay?